Hello, my friends. This is Rick the Fat Man at your seat at the table, and this particular video is going to be something just a little bit different from the norm. As you can see, me and Frankie the shelter cat are getting ready to do some videos for my channel, and upcoming some MERP and some Star Wars from West End Games, and that's not what you're doing. Don't do that. And of course, these are some different times, right? In the past, this past 6 months or so, I've tried hard to just focus when I do my videos on the material that I'm reviewing, and to leave my personal life and misadventures or adventures or concerns and things like that out of the question. But this is one of those times where I think I need to focus on specifically my thoughts and opinions and concerns and so on and so forth. As you can see, Frankie here, she has no concerns as long as everything is, what she can get done and do. And sometimes that's a good thing, having pets. I mean, that's a positive thing. I've been seeing on TV this last week shots of many animal shelters empty for the first time. It's another first, not just for our generation or the younger generations, but period, that the people have found comfort and solace in friends, our furry friends, and have gone out and done miraculous things. I know back in the last summer, when we adopted Frankie there, our local shelters were overflowing with pets. There was well over 1,000 cats at the one, and it's just a few miles up the road from us where Frankie came from, because of a number of hoarder cases over the last summer. It brought in hundreds and hundreds of cats that, and in some cases dogs, that needed homes. And it's one of the good things, I think, coming out of this pandemic and this issue. I know that some of you may or may not have caught bits and pieces. Back in December, the truck I use for the place I work at, the truck we use, really fell apart all at once, and it's never ran since. And there was probably a 6-week window where I was struggling. I was concerned, and we chewed through our little safety net. And I've tried hard to learn lessons from my youth, which I was not very thrifty when I was younger. It was all about money, or spending stuff and enjoying myself and living for the moment, because I didn't think about the future, and it cost. And I carried that into my 30s, and it cost terribly, far more than I really ever truly gave myself, time to think about. And so since then, though, we tried to put money back, and then we went through it. It was money for a rainy day or a pandemic, so the company found a truck, and it was at the 11th hour for the company's grease side of the business too. They invested a lot of money. It's a small company, and they're not swimming in cash. They're good people, but they're constantly trying to help other people, and we get a lot of lackadaisical employees at best, and some that actually do a lot more damage than people understand. Anyway, we got the truck, and then there was a very robust February where I was working 60+ hour weeks for about 5 weeks. But about that time, I started hearing rumors. I started watching videos and other things, Frankie and I and the wife and stuff, and I started watching things on YouTube about this growing virus, this COVID-19 thing. And in the past, I've seen them come and go, and I barely even acknowledged them. I never saw them for a potential world threat. And there are some arguments, although the numbers in my mind outweigh that. I mean, yes, the amount of people die every year in car accidents and just from the regular flu virus and stuff like that is excessive and doesn't get that kind of news. But you don't see any of those things slamming hospitals and lining up rows of semi-trailers to store the dead because you can't cope with the sheer volume coming in key locations. Now, I live in Iowa. For those of you who know, we are one of the handful of states that have not practiced a lockdown. We have, to be clear, the state's governor, Mrs. Reynolds, is a Republican and is following some Republican, political thought process stuff, but we have done everything. She has done everything but lock us down in name, right? We have shut everything down. Restaurants restaurants and small shops, bookstores. My favorite bookstore shut down. The casinos are shut down. No major public venues, no minor public venues. They are very strict on 10 gatherings, 10 or less, and in some cases even they're dividing it up by sections. Our state's divided into six sections. It's always been that way for other reasons, but the northeast section reached a certain plateau, and they've locked them down even more. Now they've restricted even more gatherings, but for the most part, we've avoided the term, which can be misconstrued in the public's eye, and frankly, I don't care. I mean, I feel a bit off that we haven't, just to be in solidarity with the rest of the country. But at the same time, a large share of our industry is agricultural based. You're able to shelter in place and eat because many Iowans go to work every day. And now suddenly we're starting to see the consequences of that. More and more meatpacking houses specifically are showing up with problems, and they're shutting them down temporarily, and hundreds of people are testing positive, etc., etc. We have only 74 deaths, which is quite mild compared to what normally happens in a given year. Car crashes and deaths are usually in the 200-300 because there's running tallies on the billboards as you drive down the highway, and yet better than half of them are elderly and in retirement homes and things like this. When they shut all the restaurants down, 60% of the company's business that I work for is supporting restaurants. We clean their hoods, we clean their grease traps, we're part of the health and fire code system. So we're essential services for essential services. So that put me back real bad. And then I've been rounding maybe 11 hours a week. So a month ago, going on 5 weeks ago, after encouraging my employers to understand just how severe this is, because they really were late to the party. Suddenly they woke up and they go, "Oh my God, it's much worse than we really thought." And I'd been screaming, I've been crying in the basement for 2 months prior to that things were going to get bad. And my boss's wife just wasn't having it. They're so avid Trump fans. They're also big on the sticking their heads in the sand and just focusing on the immediate issues of keeping the business going, keeping everybody busy, etc. And I can relate. I understand. I do. So the wife and I stocked up a few things, and she thought I'd lost my mind when we went into a store, and I grabbed a second cart. And at the very beginning of this toilet paper issue, grabbed a little extra. Now I didn't load up like 20 of them. I bought 2 extra packs and extra water and a few other things, and I expected to see some issues, but I did not expect to see what a lot of us have saw. The story. I don't have to repeat it. You walk into those stores and shelves are empty or depleted, and certain aisles are completely empty, and that's usually the toilet paper aisle. And after a while, I just watched some videos on YouTube, and I began to understand how come that, aside from the hoarding issue, and I'm not going to lecture you or make a big deal about it, but our industrial capacity for production is what it needs to meet the regular demands and supply. And then a large portion of our working people go out every day and they use facilities other at home. It's just like we don't eat at home 3 times a day, so now we're suddenly eating at home more. It means we're buying more groceries because we need the groceries. Well, we get the toilet paper. Now this past Friday was a sort of a cornerstone or a turning point in that aspect, because for the first time in 6 weeks, we walked into the grocery store and there's actually not just some toilet paper on the shelves, but there are several varieties of toilet paper. Yes, Frankie, I know, but I love the cat, but she gets up here and she'll step on that laptop and just mess up everything. or she just she just not she's young and full of energy. She wants to be the center of attention. Hey, I get it. Excuse me. So I sit there and actually saw some toilet paper and a variety on the shelves at our local grocery store. It was all shock to some aspect. I'm going to be 54 this year, I think, and I have never seen anything like I have seen the past 2 months. I've never seen every restaurant and business in town except grocery stores and hardware stores shut down. There's still a lot of businesses in this area that are open. If you need to go get a new lawnmower, get your old one fixed, they're open. If you need to get car parts or tires, those are open. The grocery stores, the Walmarts, a lot of the big box places, any place with a pharmacy is still open, and that allowed them to site. I've seen Targets open. That the Target in Altoona sells mostly clothing. They don't have the grocery. They're not a super Target, but they have a CVS on one end of the building, which allows them to stay open. And social distancing. I see far fewer cars on the road than I remember in a long time. I was driving down through the main thoroughfare at rush hour yesterday. I worked most of yesterday, which last week I had like 9 hours. This week I should get about 15. So I have a couple more jobs this week, but they're piddles. They're little ones here and there, and it won't be maybe an hour here, an hour there kind of thing, but it'll be you get me out of the house and let me get around a little bit. The stay-at-home thing. My wife and I are somewhat introverted anyway. We spend a lot of time at home. When I'm not out working and we're not running errands, generally speaking, we don't have much. Most of our immediate family have passed away or have distanced themselves much, or over time and space. So we don't go out much, and our kids live way down south, so we don't see them. And so we spend most of our time at home when I'm not working anyway. So it's not a huge change for us when it comes to the social distancing thing. But there's an attitude or a feeling or a vibe. And I watched too many YouTube videos distressed about how Washington's handling this crisis in America. America, the most wealthiest nation in the world, supposedly, most powerful nation in the world, or so we tell ourselves. And we are so failing at this. It's unconscionable in some aspects, it's absurd in others, and it's eye-opening. It tells me, if we had a different president, maybe things would be a little different, but we're talking the way that politics still flies. And the fact that, our death count is in the 30,000 range and up. Locally it's 74, which is, Iowa's a very small state population-wise. It's a very wealthy state. Over the last 5 or 10 years, we've become very, very successful. And now the economy's never been designed to be shut down, and yet it shows some huge weaknesses. And then if you talk about you're a socialist or you're a communist or some other BS, and you know what, politics aside, attitudes aside, I think that's ignorance and blind stupidity. If suddenly 30 million people lose their jobs and they have no income, we were living check to check to begin with, and we have no income. I'm fortunate I have an income, even if it's a small one. I was fortunate my employers woke up when I told them that we need to do something. Now pretty much everybody that works for our company is on partial unemployment. That means we work when we can, and we draw unemployment, and each week we enter our gross income, and the unemployment office compensates us for as much as they're allowed. And in addition, an additional 600 or whatever that comes from the feds at the moment until that money runs out. Personally, I owe back child support free. It's complicated as to how it got that way. It's not because I never paid it. I paid it, except when I didn't know about it for the first 9 years. And then it accrued, and then it accrued again, and the interest rates, which are small, still added up. So the stimulus package, that $1,200 per person, my wife and I won't see it, because the only thing that still taps anything is child support or back child support. And while I understand, my kids are grown. This money is just paying back state, so they don't need to steal it in that aspect. They need to share, but that's just my personal opinion. So they're going to take that 2,400 we would have had because my wife and I filed jointly because she's disabled, and yet I'm getting an additional 600 a week from for unemployment, minus taxes and minus child support. This is one of those burdens that I bear, and you can sit there and say, well, you didn't do your, no, see, don't walk in my shoes, because there's a lot of things in my past and history that you don't know, and I'm not going to share because it's none of your effing business. But I am going to gripe and bitch and moan because that's my business and my right, and this is my channel, and you can always shut off and turn away and go away, such as it is. So this is why I don't work two jobs. Never work two jobs, because child support will tap into both jobs. Now, if you have a job that makes overtime, they will not tap into overtime because it's not guaranteed income. They only base your support or what you owe or back support based on your 40 hours. So that's their figuring. So they figure I owe them $146 a week. That's $600 a month, pretty close. This is why I don't have health insurance, because the company doesn't offer it, and we just don't have an extra $600 laying around because the because health insurance will run me about $500. My wife has Medicare, and most of hers is covered because she's epileptic, and her epilepsy prevents her from working these days. It wasn't always that way. She worked for 20 years. She's always been upset that she can no longer do that. Her seizures just crop up enough that she passes out, and everybody freaks out, or it's a liability thing. So this is what allowed her to get on disability 3 years ago. So they take $146 every week out of my check, or up to 50%. So if I get a short check, they can take as much as half. If I got it $200, they can take $100 because it doesn't add up to $146 that they're entitled to. So if I got a second job, they do the same thing. So now they're taking it out for twice. So then I'm paying twice as much, which you're going to pay things back. You're paying it down, except I still owe $23,000 back child support. I figured we got another 2.5 years, and it's paid off at the rate my current wages pay. This year will expedite things because they're getting a lot more out of me. So because I'm getting unemployment, that's technically a separate job in their eyes. So they're tapping that, and they're tapping my company check, and they're tapping that $600. So out of that $600, after you minus 20% for taxes, which they recommend you take out, and the child support, I get about $400, which is still quite a bit. See, no, three something. It's 120 for taxes. No, I get $205. $205 of that $600, give or take. How did it go from 600 to 205? Right, and then I get what I get for my missed hours, and then I get what's left in my paycheck for the hours I did work. We're still coming out fairly decent. We should get about just under 600 total for this week, which would be about $150-200 more than a normal 40-hour work week. Thanks for the extra $600, Washington. That's one thing you guys got right for the working poor. So anyway, I walk into the store shelves, and my job takes me all over central Iowa, and I've stopped when the great toilet paper hunt was rushing out looking for toilet paper, and whenever the opportunity to grab a roll or two, I did. But yet I've always tried to be moderate and not overreactive. I didn't take more than it was entitled to or would have normally got on a normal before all this madness started, and I tried to remind myself that everybody else is in the same situation. So whenever I found a place that had some on sale, I let a few friends and coworkers and my employers know. That way, if they had a chance, they could run over there and grab a few themselves. I didn't empty the shelves like other people did, and I watched some people do that, and it just appalled me that Iowans usually have a good work ethic, and we also have a sense of usually a good moral compass, but not everybody's equal. And when people panic, everything's out the window. This tells me that our government's response is horrible to this situation. I watched it back when New Orleans was flooded, and it took the government almost a week to mobilize and do anything. The first 3 days, the state and the city was on its own. There was no sign of anything and anybody but the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard acted on their own. God bless the Coast Guard and those people who realized that they were desperately needed in a time it was very bad. And shame on Bush Jr.'s government in Washington in general at that time, and it's 10 times the shame on them now. Always using things as an opportunity for political maneuvering and particular political gain and power machinisms, etc., while people die and millions of people lose their jobs and potentially are going to find themselves without insurance, without a place to live, and could get much worse. And now we're desperate. Certain elements of our country are ignorant or feeling the need to put this madness aside and just try to get back on with things like it's normal. You're deluding yourselves, my friends, if that's what you think, that we're just going to flip a switch in next month and everybody's going to go back to normal. That's not going to happen right away. Normalcy is going to take a minute, and if you can't see that, I don't know what to tell you. Good luck. Yesterday, one of my few jobs stopped at a little restaurant called Marino's. It's now located in Johnston, Iowa. It used to be in Des Moines. Come on, Frankie. I don't want you spilling stuff. One more, and I'm putting you outside. No, you're going outside the door. Yes, you are. You're just so happy to be in here right now that you're getting in the way. See, now you're not high because you know what I don't want you climbing on things. You almost knocked that camera over. So, go out there. You're fine today. You're ready to climb on the equipment. I love my cat. I swear I love my cat. See, there you go. The pet's happy because she's happy. She's happy because I'm in here, I'm acting, I'm doing things, and this is our art room or storage, spare bedroom that's not a bedroom anymore. It's also the place where her cat box is and where she sometimes goes when we need to not have her underfoot, because she likes to be wherever you are, and she will literally be right next to your foot, and I've almost stepped on her twice now because she just gets so close. So the world's in a bad shape, the country's in worse shape, and we're delusional, and people in other states are actually having rallies, this COVID thing, let's get together, let's go, ignore social distancing, we're going to go back to normal. And yet, what's back to normal? They're already talking about reopening parts of the country, reopening businesses. Oh, but we're going to wear masks, and we're going to wear gloves, and we're going to go to a restaurant, and so and socially distance, etc. And like I said, I talked to Marino, and Marino's been in business 40 years. His little restaurant is kind of a hidden gem in the city, but they've been in business a long time. And Marino was concerned, and he says, this idea of social distancing in my restaurant, I might as well shut the doors. I've got 20 tables, 25 tables. If I have to take out half of them to make more space for people to have space, I won't make enough money to keep the lights on. He is doing what he can to stay in business. In Iowa, they're allowed to do takeout and to do delivery, and he never had a delivery set up. He didn't have delivery drivers. He's using Grubhub and things like that. Oh, those are great if you have money. Yeah, I mean, I ordered pizza back when things were going good. I ordered pizza to get delivered to our house, and it came through one of those third-party delivery services, and it was almost $40 for a $15 pizza when it was all done and said. Only the upper middle class and wealthy people can afford that kind of service on a regular basis. We're not going to order carry out and delivery if it's costing me $50 to get a $20 item. We can't do that even on a good day. It's a rare thing. And when things are bad, okay, I'm speaking from personal experience. Okay, my personal views on this, and I don't know, I can't be in your shoes, and I don't want to be in your shoes. I'm empathetic to all of you. We're all people. We're all humans. We're all in this together, whether we want to acknowledge or not, whether we want to stick our heads in the sand, whether we want to be oblivious, or whether we want to, trust in God to protect us. I'm a born-again Christian, been baptized twice. Got in an argument with my boss when we went to Texas back in December when he kept trying to save me, and I told him, I says, how many times do you think I got to be saved? But I'm not a blind person. God helps those who helps themselves. God wants you to do what you need to do. Stand up. And if you're waiting for God to give you a hand up, you might be waiting a long time. But don't be oblivious to the help when it does come. Don't let the boat pass you by, because it can do that if we're too blind, we're too arrogant. And arrogance comes in many subtle and sly ways, and I see it a lot, and I'm guilty of it in many aspects. And I try to work at not being that way as a human being. So Moreno and I was talking, and I agreed with him. I says it's going to take time. Even if they opened up the business May 1st and the governor says, okay, everything's back to normal, ignore the dying numbers and the people getting sick. Let's ignore all that. Let's just pretend it's just another thing. When grandma dies or great grandma dies or the neighbor's kid dies because everybody's sick or getting sick or potentially sick or have yet to get sick. This is a huge country. All you got to do is look at Europe and see how the states can function and work. But we're all going to take this roller coaster ride, and it will vary. We're not New York State by a mile or a minute. We don't have that population. The entire state of Iowa's population can fit in one borough of New York City and still probably not fill it. Yet, our numbers are small and tiny compared to theirs, deaths. But we're seeing more cases of it. And it may never get that bad, right? Yet, the economy's taken a hit. We've all taken a big bite. Most of us had to take a bite of this nasty sandwich. Those well off are writing it out much better and taking much tinier bites. And some people are taking no bites because they've found a way to get through the loopholes. And that's always been a problem, always been part of our system. It's a capitalistic version of graft or the old Asian moniker of fragrant grease, right? Okay, so personally, the wife and I are down. Our savings is depleted down to the last $100, and the unemployment finally kicked in. It took 4 weeks for it to kick in. They were averaging 30,000 applicants a week here, which is tiny compared to other places, but it's still pretty huge for our local machine to handle. Just about the same week I got my first check, the $600 from the feds kicked in as well, so we were so pleasantly surprised last week, and we were able to catch all our bills up and pay a couple of others that were coming due. But had that not happened, we wouldn't even had enough to buy groceries, let alone pay anything, right? My wife gets disability, and we pay our mortgage out of that. We can keep our mortgage going and our lights on, and then the rest of it has to come out of what I make. And we run up some credit card debt over the winter, dealing with the truck being broke down and not getting very many hours, etc. So we pushed in our limits. And if we want, I worked hard to get my credit to where it is. A lot of people take that for granted, and I did too for years, and I didn't care until I did. And suddenly, when I realized just how important it was, in order for you to get a house or a car or something like that, you need to have decent credit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but decent anyway. But I worked hard to get it there, and I'd hate to see it just go to the side because I can't do something, not because I'm not willing to. And fortunately, we're not in that spot. Marino, he's going to take time to recover. And if he can only seat a quarter of his normal or half of his normal seating capacity, he's not going to make it. He's not saying that, but he's implying it. He can't make up for it in disability or in takeout and delivery. The wife and I will get by as long as things keep at the current pace we're doing as best as we can, as well as we were a month and a half ago. The last month was very stressful on me, worried constantly about how we were going to get when things really went bad, what we were going to do when everything ran out. Well, fortunately, we got a reprieve God's miracle and kicked in. The feds, one of the few things the feds did for the poor people, actually, if you can qualify for it by being unemployed and getting on the line, etc. And they talk about, then some snarky troll bastards will sit there and go, oh, well, it's socialism. Well, if you can live high on the hog or fairly well and not worry about not paying your light bill or keeping the water bill paid or buying your groceries, good for you. Good for you. And then shame on you if you think that the other 40 or 50% of your neighbors are somehow or another bums for wanting that or needing that help. Shame on you. You're arrogant person. See, arrogance comes in many forms and many ways. I'm being arrogant right now and condescending towards those people out there who think they're better than everybody else because somehow or another they're twisted in their head. Their opinions are their opinions, just like mine are mine and yours are yours, and we're all in this together, and except when we're not, right? We're all in a lifeboat, and some of us are hanging onto the sides in freezing water, and some of us inside are squirming around saying, I don't have enough space. Get away from the boat. Get away from the boat. Grandma, go ahead and die. Go ahead and go. I'm pretty sure some of you may or may not have heard that comment come out of the Texas vice governor or whatever he was, where he says, I think some of the elderly would more than happy die to go ahead and die to save the economy. Really? And I see a lot of that, rather than outright saying it, but I see a lot of it. So I told Marino, I says, I'm just being honest. The wife and I used to go out about once a week to some restaurants here and there. Stop at McDonald's probably once a week, so we're going out twice a week. Well, we don't have the funds to do that, and I can't consciously do that with the funds I got because suddenly I'm paranoid. I'm worried that what I got could suddenly dry up and disappear, and it can. So I have to make sure that I'm pushing back as much as I can because I don't know what next month's going to be. My employers are always, we're going to be busy the next 2 months. You're going to have lots of hours. Yet most of our customers are not open or not fully open. How can you say that? Well, because they're going to reopen the economy. Are they? Should they? Well, of course they should. Are they? Probably. Are a lot more people going to get sick and die? Right? What's the exception? What's the acceptable? I think this is where our government's failing us horribly. They were purposely blowing it off. Elements of it took advantages of the knowledge they knew, sold their stocks and padded their pockets, and others played ignorant, played the politics, played the political line. Some people are just outright nuts and they can't make up their mind from one day to the next. I've never been a fan of Trump, I admit that. I didn't vote for the man. Truthful, I didn't vote for anybody. Lesser evil is still an evil in my mind. Why bother? And which isn't, it's part of the system. Yet, I watch what he's doing, and I'm thinking, you're a madman, you're crazy, and your people behind you are sucking up to you. And 1 minute they're nodding their heads with what you say, and then the next minute they're up there trying to correct them and re-inform the misinformed. Meanwhile, enough misinformed keep getting misinformed. And the fact that we were not prepared for this when they knew about this back in January, they knew this potential was there, is shameful. It is shameful. And then when things really hit the fan and everybody across the oceans were dying in droves, we were still sticking our heads in the sand or playing politics or playing it's a sham, it's a hoax, it's nothing, it'll pass. It's just like the others. So what I really take away from this is if when the next pandemic breaks out, and it may not be in our lifetime, I'm just saying let's hope we don't have to go through anything like this again in our lifetime, but our children, our grandchildren, someday, somebody's going to. We were terribly not prepared. We didn't have the basics. Now it's hard to project forward and say, oh, we need 100,000 ventilators in storage. We need 100 million PPEs in storage. It's hard to make that kind of investment and just let it sit and rot because certain things have shelf life. So even if you bought them in preparation for something that might happen 50 years from now, the odds are that equipment will have to be replaced several times before that happens, and that's a lot of money and a waste of materials. I get it. But the infrastructure and the plans were also not adequate. And this political BS flapping out of Washington and between Washington and the state governors and et cetera, is shameful. And they can do better. We should do better. We're supposed to lead by example for the rest of the world, and this is a poor example. It's just pathetic. It's sad. The system's gotten bad and gotten worse, and et cetera. Come election time, I'm voting. The sad part is, somehow or another, the Democrats have decided Biden's a good person to put up against Trump. Trump's going to win the next election. I'm telling you, it's not a prediction. I can tell you right now, Biden has no chances. He has a snowball's chance in hell of being elected president. Partly because he's got a whole lot of baggage under wraps right now that they try to cover up. But in this Me Too movement and touchy-feely environment prior to this COVID thing, old boys in not a good position should not be a president, should not be in Congress, to be truthful. And then, anytime he gets in front of a camera, if he doesn't have a pre-written script, or the questions go off script, he's stumbling and bumbling and so not educated in what he needs to be educated in, or he's showing early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's, which happens to everybody at some point, and at certain age groups are worse than others. So we're going to push this guy because we don't like Bernie's too much for the little guy, too much for the poor man mindset. And yet even Bernie's a part of the political cog because he stepped out when he had a good chance of still winning. Just because the Democrats want Biden. The Democrats want Trump to be president for another 4 years. Yeah, that's probably what it is. They really, truly put Biden up there because he has no chance of winning. And those people behind the scenes, they are not as stupid as people might think they are. They're extremely arrogant and misguided. Doesn't matter. So Marino, God bless him, and I hope he does well. 60% of our business depends on restaurants. I told my employer, she's like, well, as soon as they get back up, it's going to take them months to recover from this. They got to rehire their staff, assuming their staffs come back, fill in the ones that don't, try to regenerate. A lot of us are not going to be able to go back to the restaurants right away, not on the level that we were doing. We're going to be more mindful because we got to replace our surplus or our savings. If we had some, we have to regain our footing. If we're suddenly piling up bills because we can't pay them now, they're still going to come due. Oh well, they're not going to turn your lights off, but they're going to pile up that bill. So if I don't pay my light bill this month, next month is twice as much, 3 times as much, 4 times as much. How many months can I go? And at some point I'm going to have to pay that bill, and I'll have to pay and pay and pay. Welcome to how back child support works. You get a taste of what some of us have been dealing with for years. This is the reason why I'm not flat on my face right now, because I've learned to prepare and be basically as best I can. Take that and be mindful for it. So we pay everything we can. Every lick of our savings, want to make sure our bills get paid. I started reducing those bills as much as I could, but there's certain things that don't change, right? I mean, the next step would be to eliminate things. Cable will be the first thing to go. Potentially my internet. That's $136 a month for me. That's $136 a month. That it's the most expensive bill I have. My electric bill is $100. My water bill is $40. My internet and basic cable is $136. It's just crazy. I'm going to pause here for a moment, and then we'll get back to my rant. Let's resume local recording, so hopefully I didn't screw things up. So, like a lot of people, be a little less inclined to run out and spend money frivolously. The wife and I were planning on buying a little garden tiller, rototiller this year, about $150, and I had my gut told me last month to let's just hold up, not put that on the credit card because things are already tight, not to spend what little extra cash we had set back for that. And then I'm grateful I didn't. And now, the old shovel will still turn the dirt over, and I'll still get my tomato plants planted. Talk about a bit of a depression. I fell into a bit of a depression I just watching video, I found myself a lot of time on my hands. And I got a lot of projects around here that I can do and I want to do and I continue doing and keep working on. And yet I couldn't pull myself out of the chair. I couldn't break away from the horrid things I was seeing on YouTube and the reactions and the politics and all the other things with this COVID. It's not a mortality thing. I know I'm getting up there. I'm not that morbid. I just already stressed since the first of the year because of a lot of different things that were work-related hours, finances, those sort of things. So I found reasons to, this last week, the weather turned south. In April, we had snow, blizzards in Frankie's just determined to get in here. Yes, Frankie, I can see you poking around. You're opening that door by increments. I'm not having you climbing on stuff. You can't stop from climbing on stuff. You can't be on here. If she wouldn't climb on things, she wouldn't try to step on the laptop or try to rub up against the camera or basically get all over here, we wouldn't have that problem. God bless the shelter cat, right? Our other cat, she just sleeps all day. You know, she's older. She's like me, old, fat. I found myself sleeping a lot more, which also is, I don't normally sleep 10 hours a day, and that, I think, takes its toll. I like an afternoon nap, and I get about 6 or 7 hours, 6 hours of sleep on a normal night. An hour or two in the late afternoon when things are slow, it's fine. But when I start sleeping, staying up late, sleeping late, it just throws the patterns off. And then we had, like I said, we had a week of cold. The weather dropped. It got snowed and rained. We just planted flowers last week and had to bring most of them into the garage for 3 days. Fortunately, they were in planters, so we were do that. Now that that's over with, and we're getting closer to May, that should be the last of that, and we can get on with getting the garden put in. And I've got leaf protectors. Last year I put them up across the front of the house. I got them already in the garage for the back of the house, and I need to get them done. We'll clean out the RV and clean it up. We're probably going to put it up for sale. It's just sitting there, and I don't want it to go totally. It's an old vehicle anyway, and it served us well. Maybe it can serve somebody else, and we could use the cash. So that's another project that needs to be done, and other things, plus other stuff I want to do, like doing my videos and stuff here. I mean, I have been slow. I didn't normally every weekend on a Saturday or Sunday, depending on my work schedule, I do a couple videos for my channel, and it's just lacking the energy or the drive or something else. So like Marino, we have to recover, we have to rebuild our savings, we have to maintain what we have now and keep going forward. The only bill I have yet to pay is my car payment. We're 3 months ahead on our car payments, and so I had some room for that, and if my intention is to pay it next week, as long as the 600 minus all the deductions still popping into the account, we should be able to do that, and we're paying down our credit cards as much as we can. We're still carrying way too much credit card debt than I should, and I know better. So, but we wanted some things, needed some things last year, and then we didn't expect the truck to fail and to have issues with the work, but we don't plan for that. We can't expect them to fail. We don't want them to fail. That's part of our government's problem right now. We didn't want things to fail. We wanted them to be successful. Trump is huge on having a great economy, and I am huge on having a great economy, because we all do well as we're going to do, but we could do far much better. And this thing is opened my eyes to a lot of our problems, much bigger problems. I'm sad to say that when this passes, I think we'll see a lot of rhetoric, and we'll see a little change. Universal health care, there's a lot of people think it's an arrogant thing or stupid thing. You say that because you have insurance, but you lose your job and you don't have that insurance. What are you going to do? I've been living without insurance for 3 years. That weighs on my mind. I get kind of a buzzy feeling in my arms there lately. Something didn't used to do it, but now it does. I mean, it's some kind of pinched nerve or whatever. I mean, I know I'm pre-diabetic, and I'm doing a poor job of trying to combat that. And without medication, it's just making it worse. Heart issues. Yeah, my grandfather had a number of heart attacks. He lived to be 96, but he had several heart attacks and 2 open heart surgeries back when they did actually do those. Now they just put stents and other things in you. But he had insurance. I don't have insurance, so if something major like that happens, then what? I can't afford it. And that's just the brutal truth. On a straight 40-hour work week, we make enough to pay all our bills and have a little extra, but nothing enough extra on a regular basis to guarantee for me to outlay for insurance on my own. And yeah, I could change jobs, and that could very well come, but that's not an option at the moment. It's not a viable one. Then there's, guaranteed income stuff. I have mixed feelings on that. $1,000 a month every month. Yeah, couldn't we all do a little better on that, or would we just become more extended, right? I think that the government needed to step up and do its part, but I think it did it in its typical neo-political self to another $2+ trillion, and we get the average poor bloke gets a little bit. Here's a little token, except unless of course you owe child support, then you're not going to see it. But the bulk of the people with way too much money to begin with got their share, and they got more than their share, and somehow that seems wrong. But then this is how that's supposed to be, and I don't agree when they talk about the capitalist system. We're a democracy, we're a republic. We're not a capitalist government. That's a dogma, that's a mindset, that is a mantra. But it's not how it's supposed to be. That's not how the founding fathers envisioned America to be. A place where you can, free to make money and be wealthy and things like that. True, but should you do that on the backs of everybody else? Why is my tax-paying dollar going into the 1% of the 1%'s pockets instead of doing the greater good for the greater people, for the larger group? Somehow that's a socialist mindset to think that everybody's entitled to certain inalienable rights that's in our freaking Constitution. And yet we're failing on that stuff. So, I don't know how long this is going to take you guys to stand up. And everybody's in this together, except when we're not. Social gathering, except when you feel like you want to go out and gather. I mean, 3 weeks ago, like I said, our state closed things down in increments. The last major closing was supposed to be city parks and public parks and things like this. So I go out, and then they tell you it's okay to go out and get some exercise. Go out and exercise. Keep your social distance. So yesterday I'm driving along the west side where there's lots of trails and bike paths and things like that. It's all integrated, and where I see is scores and scores and scores of people out there riding bikes back and forth, passing each other, groups of people under 10 wandering around, mostly family groups, yet constantly passing each other within feet because the pathways are only so wide, right? Nobody wants to step off into the muddy grass. Everywhere you go to the grocery store. I have never seen so many people at the grocery store on a regular basis than I have this past month and a half. And my wife and I go once a week. Sometimes we go twice because we find out that we eat more at home than we did. We stretching our diet a little bit. You're only allowed to get one thing of eggs. There's the other side of things. We talk about going to the grocery store. My grocery bill has gone up. The cost of getting things. Now, the wife and I generally only buy what we normally buy, but we're now paying probably $70 a week compared to what we were 2 months ago. And my reason behind it is the availability. I've noticed that a lot of the store brand material, this cheaper stuff, is slower getting replenished on the shelves than the name brand things. It's like shoes. You want a $75 pair of shoes, get one with a brand name. You want a usable, productive set of shoes that are pretty much the same shoe minus the logo brand. You can pay half as $35 compared to 70, I'm going to take this shoe every day because I'm not in it for the branding. So a couple weeks ago, I needed to get a box of oatmeal, and all the store brand oatmeal's out. The only thing left was the Quaker Oats, and the Quaker Oats cost almost twice as much. And I bought the Quaker Oats. Well, you didn't have to buy the oatmeal. I says, that's true, but you know what? We're not supposed to change everything. And there was one thing left on the shelf, so I figured I better grab it while I can, because I come back next week, it's likely not to be there at all. And this thing pattern goes on. So we get to the eggs. We go to the store, and here's piles and piles of the 12 packs. And then here's the 18 packs. 12 packs are on sale for 99 cents. We're only allowed to have one thing of eggs. Well, generally speaking, if you eat a lot of eggs, better to buy the 18 pack over the 12 pack. Right? You can't buy two 12 packs because you're only allowed one. So if you buy the bigger thing of eggs, the bigger thing of eggs were $3.89 for an extra set of eggs. Extra 6 eggs. I'm paying $3 extra. See, that's not illegal. It's not price gouging, because that's the regular wholesale price of those bigger pack eggs, but they're usually on sale. So the wife and I had to settle for either paying 3 times as much for the extra eggs, or just to buy the 12 pack. So we buy the 12 pack and then come back for another set, right? Come back on a different day. So now we have an excuse to go back to the store and yet intermix into this pool of hundreds of people and scores of people. And then our local Walmart, I didn't want to talk about that. I mean, God bless y'all, and I know a couple people, Rob and stuff that works at Walmart. God bless all you guys for doing what you're doing. It's just suddenly funny, and I'm going to wrap this up soon because it's running on. I get it. It's kind of funny. I worked in the service industry for years. I was in convenience stores for many years and restaurants before that. And now I work in a company that services restaurants and convenience stores and things like that. So it's still kind of an unbroken chain. The fact is, suddenly all these people working in close proximity, these grocery store workers, are heroes. The local Hy-Vee runs ads constantly on the day about, with the heroes song, and here it is showing clips of people in PVPs and hospital workers and fire trucks and the military and the police, etc., and Hy-Vee workers, all heroes of the moment. And y'all are. You're going to work every day and you're providing a vastly vital service, in more ways than you know. And you're being subject to lots of possibility for getting sick. And we're seeing it now. We're seeing it cropping up in the news where these, lots and lots of these people. Now, a lot of these people don't make a whole lot of money. They're at the lower end of the 40% who live check to check, who the upper 30% of y'all who think that, any kind of handout is a social, pathway to destruction. Your arrogance amazes me. But suddenly these people keeping these doors open, these restaurants, and these stores and these other things running, suddenly they're heroes. Walmart, we're going to get everybody a raise. Should have given them that damn raise years ago. Shouldn't have to give it to them now. And how long is that going to last? It's like, the Walmart's hiring and Hy-Vee's hiring. They're going on a hiring spree. You can go get another job. But that ain't going to last. This will get over with, and suddenly they'll find themselves with too many employees. And what happens then? Then they get to go, which ones do we want to keep? Oh, this one we've had a while, but they've always been a bit of a problem, or an arrogant or opinionated. Right, you go find another job. Restaurants are opening. Those restaurant people didn't make a whole lot of good money. A lot of small businesses can't afford to pay a $15, $16, $18 an hour. They just can't, because our economy won't support it, because it's not set up that way. So you get by on just more than minimum wage. The argument about minimum wage for years, I don't know. In Iowa, nobody, very, 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 very few people actually get paid minimum wage. The unspoken minimum wage is around $12, because most of these people know when the economy is really good and the unemployment, we had the lowest unemployment rate in the state for a long time, or in the nation for a long time, or damn near the lowest. And what I saw was a whole lot of people who didn't need to work for $8 an hour or $10 an hour when they could go wash dishes for $12 an hour That's also part of that's kind of how free market system's supposed to work, how capitalism's supposed to work. It doesn't ever work that way very often, but it's supposed to. Now suddenly all these, we're going to give everybody raises, and we're going to give everybody paid sick leave. Are we? I don't get paid sick leave. I don't care what the feds say. I'm pretty sure my employers are going to not want to do that. Universal health care or one-payer health care. If I could afford the damn thing, I would want it. Obamacare. The funny thing about Obamacare is if you make more than X amount of dollars, you don't qualify for it. Yet, you're not making enough money to outlay. So there's still a whole lot of people who do not have insurance because we can't afford the insurance. It was cheaper to pay the tax penalty for not having insurance than to pay for the insurance, which is wrong, in my opinion. So I expect we'll get through, and I know we'll get through this. We'll get through this some places better than others. The economy restart is coming in very short order. I'm going to see a sloppy, haphazard, half-handed attempt at restarting the economy the same way they haphazard, half-hearted, half-attempted to try to get a handle on this COVID thing before when it first started, or didn't until it was too late, until it became a big thing, when they could have kept it a small thing. And now they're fighting it. I expect it to get worse again. The economy is going to spalter and spit and splutter and fall down and stand up and fall down again. It's not going to just flip a switch and everything back to what it was. It's going to take a minute. It could take a year or longer. It's the truth. And I'm not a highly educated and highly knowledgeable person when it comes to any of that stuff, but I can see it. I see it daily, and I see it in the businesses that I do have contact with. I see it in my own personal life. I understand how far you can go, how far down in the rabbit hole you can fall, or how deep a pit you can dig before you find yourself having to figure out how to get the back out of it. I've been there. I put myself there, and I drug myself back out of it with help and with a lot of hard work and sometimes oblivious surprise or shock when suddenly I achieved something that I didn't think I could do. This house around me was something I never ever thought I could ever do. And I am here, and we're still here. And you're still there. We're still doing these videos, and you're still viewing them. And I hope this finds you doing well. Keep your spirits up as best you can. Some people have much easier time doing that than others. Remember, today the sun's shining. It's going to be in the low 60s. It's still chilly out right now because it's late morning. I'm going to do some videos aside from this one and post them later, and then go make lunch, then go outside, work on that garden, get some more stuff done outside, at least a little bit to make myself feel better. I've been focusing on a game called Dwarf Fortress. If you're not familiar with it, you should at least look into it. It is a very chunky, clunky, mechanically driven resource management style of game system with very basic programming. It is right up my alley. So, keep your spirits up. Remember, we're all in this more or less together. Try not to knock the guy that's hanging onto the damn boat with his fingernails off just because you need a little squirming room. Remember, we're all people. Whether you like us or not, whether you like your neighbors or not, they're still out there and they're still doing the same thing, and they're still struggling, or they're not struggling. But we're all this. So, this is your seat at the table. Thank you for listening.